This is a tutorial using symmetrical diminished scales. There are 3 unalike symmetrical diminished scales. You can pick any key and start descending whole step, half step, for instance. If you're ascending, it's half step, whole step. So I picked C and did a symmetrical diminished scale. Starting up a minor third would be the same group of notes. Up another minor third, still the same group of notes. So that's 4 symmetrical diminished scales that are related. Then if we start up a half step from C on C sharp, and up another minor third, you would get the same group of notes. And so on and so forth. Starting on G and B flat gives you the same notes. If I started on D, that's the other scale. And then if you did it on F, A flat, and B, which, by the way, that outlines a diminished 7th chord. So there's many different implications that are involved with why this is called symmetric or symmetrical, or also octatonic scale, because it is an 8-note scale. Now you can use this on dominant 7th chords. So I could use the C symmetrical diminished scale, or starting on C, over C 7th, E flat 7th, G flat 7th, A 7th. So I'll play this scale descending so you can hear what this sounds like. Then E flat, still the same scale, just starting on a different note. And then A. Now we'll do the same thing with D flat, and use D flat 7th, E 7th, G 7th, B flat 7th. Keep in mind these are outlining diminished 7th chord. D flat, E, G, and B, they all outline a diminished 7th chord. So everything comes back to being related to a diminished 7th chord. But we're going to use dominant 7ths in this tutorial. This is using it on D flat. And then E, G, and B flat. Then we can do it on D, F, A flat, and B. Still the same notes. Now we'll go back to the C diminished and use it as part of a progression, like a 2-5-1 in F. So we'll do G minor 7, C 7, F major 7th. Some of these have 9s and 13s. I'm not going to get into all that. So here's a lick on 2-5-1 in F using symmetrical diminished on the dominant 7th chord. So without all the trills and mordants, where you can do patterns like okay, another example, same type of a lick, 2-5-1 in A flat, so using symmetrical diminished on the E flat 7. Once I go down to A flat major. Now here's some other ways of using the scale. So over C 7th, instead of playing the actual scale, I can play triads, major triads built on the same degrees as the dominant 7th chords we just went over. For instance, so C, E flat, G flat, A, C, that works over the C 7th. I can do patterns like, or as part of a lick or progression, you could do G minor 7th, you can also use minor chords over the same root notes. So instead of C major, I can go to C minor because it's related to the scale. also work. So C minor, E flat minor, G flat minor, A minor, C minor. Again, you can do C major, A major, G flat major, E flat major, C minor, A minor, G flat minor, E flat minor, or diminished. I can go. Now here's using some diminished triads, harmonizing the scale. So here's the scale. Now I can harmonize those notes with diminished triads. Or whatever, you can create patterns. Whatever you want to do on those particular groups of notes. Now here's using symmetrical diminished scales over diminished seventh chords. So on the same chords, we'll use the C diminished again. So for C seventh, we can do C sharp diminished seventh with the same scale. So for C seventh, it's for C sharp diminished seventh, you use the same scale. Or E flat seventh, I can go to E diminished. Note the diminished chord relationships with all these. We're starting on E flat because it's kind of related to E flat seventh. And then G flat seventh or G diminished seventh. So it starts on the seventh note of that scale. And then A seventh or A sharp diminished would start on A. Okay, here's using the symmetrical diminished scale over C sharp diminished seventh as sharp 2 diminished in a progression. So here's the progression. It'll be C major seventh, C sharp diminished seventh, D minor seventh, G seventh, to C major seventh. I'm going to put some other things on the chords, like 9s and 11s and whatnot, but let's not worry about that. Okay, so here's a lick, kind of like a double time lick. Now here it is a little bit slower. Did it on a C Lydian mode there. So on the G7th, I basically took the triad, and then on the diminished 7th, I used two different symmetrical diminished patterns there. I did one on the C sharp diminished 7th, which was C diminished scale, and then on the G7th, I used the G diminished scale. So two different examples within one progression using symmetrical diminished. And again, that can be transposed on all 12 chords. And again, there's 3 unalike diminished 7th scales. And one thing to clarify with these is on dominant 7th chords, the symmetrical diminished pattern wants to go down a 5th to a chord down a 5th to resolve that dominant 7th chord. So for instance, G7th wants to go down a 5th to C major 7th. But if I use it on a diminished 7th chord, it usually wants to go up or down a half step. So in that situation, it's going to D minor 7th, up a half step. But it could also go down a half step as well. For instance, on Antonio Carlos Jobim, Wave. That's going down a half step, so it's B flat diminished going down to A minor 7th. So that would take the same scale. That would take the C diminished scale going down to A minor. But that could also go up to B minor if I was in the key of A. And then you can go and so on and so forth up the progression. and do many different patterns. Thank you for watching this tutorial on diminished scales. I hope you'll join me again on another tutorial in the future. Thank you very much. Michael Leggerie signing off.